Welcome to the part 3 of Northeast Insurgency lecture. In this lecture we will take Assam as a separate topic. In the part 1 we have given an introduction about the Northeast Insurgency within the India and how they are getting support from our hostile neighbors, the funding of the weapons and all. In that part 1 lecture I have talked about the Siliguri corridor, that is the one of the main choke point of India from the mainland India to the northeast part of the India. Further, in the part 2 we have taken a separate lecture for the Nagaland, as in this lecture we have taken Assam. In the part 2 we have talked about all the insurgent groups happening within the Nagaland, how they have an aim of making a Nagalim through the Naga clubs. They have a footprint pre-independence only, and post-independence we are fighting with those insurgent groups as they formed after the post-independence against the Indian government. How that NACN was formed and the faction was came, where the three leaders were Isaac Muiwa and the Kaplang. Their two factions came. Isaac Muiwa became the part of one NACN Isaac Muiwa one faction, and NACN Kaplang faction. Isaac Muiwa faction were getting fund from the Bangladesh region, and the Kaplang faction were getting the fund from the Myanmar region. Ultimately, in the 2015, our government strategically, with the help of Bangladesh, came down with the negotiation with the Isaac Muiwa faction, and still Kaplang faction is active. Now in this lecture we are moving to the part 3 as an Assam. Here we will see all the Northeast insurgencies groups happening in the Assam. Moving ahead. So first we will see how Assam jumped into that this insurgency kind of things, because earlier Assam was indulged from that NACN faction only, that is Nagaland faction only. As the Nagaland was divided from India, then also why we are getting issues in the Assam region. The only issues that we are getting in the Assam is because of the migration, because of the political issues, as politicians are allowing migrants as their vote banks. They are giving them that voting cards and all. This is not acceptable by the local people of the Assam, because you are giving them right to live in their land. So that is the issue that is emerging and has lead to an insurgent group within the territory, and we are tackling with we are creating problems to the local tribes of these regions, which make them more hostile towards our government. So in this slide, Assam is a diverse and multi-ethnic state, and it is home to number of native indigenous tribes such as Ahoms, Bodoland, Ahoms. You will see these types are mainly in the news, and as soon as these will come into the news I will be making videos on them too. Okay, so those indigenous tribes like Koch, Rajbonshis, Mishings, Dimasas, Kukis, Karbis, and innumerable other small tribes with a significant presence of Bengalis, Biharis, Orias, Nepalis, etc. In those tribes, Ahoms, Bodos, then Kukis, Karbis, sometimes in the news you will find it. Okay, in these outsiders like Bengalis and Biharis, mostly Biharis went there because by the Britishers only, as a laborer working in the tea plantation, and from that period they settled there only, and because of that issue we are getting the name of Bihar in Assam too. And many a times we will find in the news that some Biharis were killed in Assam and all, mostly during the time of 2009 and 2010, because of these reasons only. Okay, so despite of such diverse state, it was a peaceful until 1970. Till 1970 there was no issue, as the people who were introduced outside from the Britishers in the tea plantations, they settled there, they lived there, they started their families and all in the Assam only. Okay, but the issues emerged only after 1970. Why? When the East Pakistan got liberated from the Pakistan and became Bangladesh. Okay, from that too much migration happened, and after that till 1971 also, after illegal migration kept continuing, and because of these issues only, the insurgent groups started to emerge in the Assam against the government of India. Okay, till now, till 1970, the only major insurgency in the region was Naga's insurgencies. Okay, we will find NSC and all. Okay, post 1970, after this, that is post 1970, that is that Bangladesh, after the formation of Bangladesh, post 1970, state has faced lots of insurgent movement violence because of the migration from the Bangladesh and the other regions also. Okay, so moving ahead, the major insurgent groups that are present in the Assam, these are ULFA, NDFB and KLO. ULFA is nothing but United Liberation Frontier Assam. These are mostly in the news. You came to know about this news in the news too. Their main objective was to independent Assam from the mainland India. Okay, and the outfit was always been opposed of the problem of illegal migration which comes from the Bangladesh. You will see a very common reason in the insurgent movement of the Assam and in the nearby states, that is the illegal migration. They don't have an issue with the migration that happened before the that is the formation of Bangladesh, but the issue is emerging because of the illegal migration. And even after the illegal migration, they are getting support by the politicians as a vote bank. That is the main issue. That is the main problem. Then the second group is our National Democratic Fund of Bodoland. This outfit has been fighting to set up an independent sovereign habitat of a Bodoland present in the state of Assam. This is the most continuous in the news. ULFA you may sometimes not hear, but the NDFB will be in the news as a separate Bodoland. Okay. Then KLO, Kamptapur Liberation Organization, their main objective was is to unite few districts in Assam with the few districts of Bengal and to set up an independent region known as Kamptapur outside India. They want to form an independent region known as Kamptapur. Kamptapur will include the few districts of Bengal and the other regions and the few districts of that is the Assam, and they will totally call as a place called Kamptapur. Okay, so these are the four insurgent groups in the Assam. NSCN was the part of Nagaland. When the Nagaland get separate status of as a state, then this was completely came under the Nagaland only. In the Assam, there is the ULFA, NDFB and KLO. ULFA, United Liberation Frontier Assam, NDFB, National Democratic Fund of Bodoland, and the KLO, Kamptapur Liberation Organization. Okay, so all the three are separatist outfit and make a major threat to India, and all the three are designated as a terrorist outfit. Why the terrorist outfit? As I have said, in the Naxalist and Maoist movement, the difference between one of the Maoist movement are completely dependent upon the raising arms against the government. Similarly, they have raised arms against the government, and thus they are termed to be as a terrorist outfits under the Unlawful Prevention Act of 1967. They are the Indian citizens, they are deprived Indian citizens, but they have raised arms against the Indian government, and because of this we are designated them as a terrorist outfits. Okay, as the NSCN faction of the Nagaland was declared, that is mentioned here, that remember NSCN always acted as a parent organization in the northeastern region, and they extended a logistical support, training, arms and weapons to the various insurgent outfits. It means they were helping these kind of insurgent groups. And from where they are getting funds and arms, from where NSCN are getting funds and arms, they are getting arms and funds from our hostile neighbors, like the NSC and Khaplang faction is getting support from China till today. Even today they are getting funds from the China. Okay, so as NACN was much organized outfits and enjoy a safe haven in Myanmar, they are getting help from the China. It is not like the Myanmar government is helping. Myanmar, two insurgent groups are also there who are helping them. Okay, moving ahead, illegal migrants issues, that is the major issue of the Assam. Because of these issue only we have insurgent groups in the Assam, these three insurgent groups, ULFA, NDFB, KLO. And because of these issues only they are demanding for a separate independent land. Some are want separate Bodoland in the state of Assam, and some are opposed of the illegal migrants. Okay, so the state of Assam has received a huge influx of illegal migrants and refugees since 1947. I have explained till now. Before 1971 we are calling it as a legal, but after 1971 we are calling it as illegal migrants. Okay, the first wave of refugees came from the East Pakistan during the partition of the 1947. The first migration of the people happened when the division of India happened, when the East Pakistan and the India. Okay, so at that time the first influx of migrants came, refugees came, and again faced huge refugees under the liberation of Bangladesh war in the 1971. And the post 1971 we are continuously receiving illegal migrants from the Bangladesh, and they getting support by our politicians as a vote bank. Okay, so refugees are those persons, what do you understand by the refugees? So refugees are those persons whose life is under threat and most probably may be the target by the government forces or by certain organizations. Organizations may be termed as insurgent groups. Okay, so they flee from their home country and they seek asylum in the other countries. Like you will hear in the news, like from North Korea it is very difficult to escape, but if some person is escaping from this North Korea, they are getting shelter in the South Korea and the China. Okay, as a refugee, and they are helping them. Similarly, if a person is getting deprived, getting threat to their life, they used to migrate into the another country and they will be called as refugees. Okay, and they will seek asylum in that country. So it is the duty of every country in the world to protect the life of these refugees under human rights, and India has accepted refugees from Tibet, Sri Lanka, East Pakistan and Afghanistan. And similarly, Western countries received refugees from the conflicted zones too. Other countries are also getting refugees. So they are generally granted asylum by the international laws and basic setup under the premises, basic sanitation facilities, bathroom, toilets, rooms and are basic provided as per the international laws. So but illegal migrants are those who are entering into the, that now I am defining for the illegal migrants, that these are refugees, these are allowed by the government. Now the illegal migrants are those who are entering into the country through an illegal method. They do not have required documents such as visas. Such migrations takes place in the search of better livelihood and the opportunities. So similarly, that I have given the example for the North Korean people who are getting into the other countries and all, they will be called as illegal migrants too, but in the most of the cases they are treated as a refugee, because everybody knows the condition of North Korea. Everybody know it is a very dictatorship kind of rule there. So that's why they are confusing, like we call it as a refugee or illegal migrants, but many a times they treat them as a refugees. And in some cases also it has been seen that if any migrant tried to escape from the North Korean regions, Chinese government sent back to the North Korean people, and as per the dictatorship they will getting killed. Okay, but these news are not sometimes most probably not come in the public visions. We come to know about those people who escaped, who finally escaped and getting better life outside the North Korea. Okay, so huge influx of the illegal migrants alters the demography of the region, and same thing happened in the Assam, that the natives feel that these outsiders will snatch away their resources and opportunities as like jobs and all. So they may create a negative impact on their cultural identity as well as the most of the people in the Assam, in the tribal people also, that they are too much protective towards their nature because they are completely dependent upon the nature, as their customs, religions and worships are all dependent upon the natures and the environment, and because of this they are too much protective related to the nature, as these outsiders are introduced in their place, so they are feeling uncomfortable, threatened by these outsiders. And when they are getting support by the government, this create a huge problems within their community, and as the end of this issue they raise arms against the government. Okay, so they felt threatened by the Bengali migrant. Illegal migrants were alleged from the large scale electoral malfunction during the 1978 that I have said just now. Okay, so an illegal migrant, an opportunity for politicians, that is Assam agitation, that I was explaining from the first slide only. What is the issue? How they are getting support from the politicians? Without politicians, nothing can happen in this country. If they are not getting support, then there is no chance of coming that huge number. 1 can enter, 2 can enter, 3 can enter, but it can't be 1000. If 1000 is getting entered into any country, it means they are getting support from somewhere else. Somewhere else means what? The ruling power. Okay, so the political party saw the illegal migrants as their vote banks and gave them voter card, as I've said, and this development triggered the native tribes of Assam, and natives started opposing the alleged electoral malpractice because sometimes booths were also looted when the ballot boxing system was there. They were not allowed to give their votes, and the outsiders were giving the vote. See what was the situation. This resulted large scale massive protest in 1979, and this agitation lasted until 1985. See the period. Okay, and popularly this is known as the Assam agitation. Because of this massive protest in the 1979, and this continued till 1985, this is something called as the Assam agitation. Okay, and it was largely led by the college students of state of Assam, and they started the demand of NRC, national registered of the citizenship, to possibly deport the illegal migrants. And initially government did not respond to such demands, and they returned into a damaging violence. Then the state responses with the massive security forces against them. And recently in the news of the 2019, the youth protest was going against the NRC and the CA protest and all, that this is the news. When the CA was not there, their demand was from the long back only NRC, and ultimately in the 2019 it was passed in the bill, and this protest happened. Why? Protest was not against the NRC. The protest was the mixture of NRC and the CA. We will take this issue in the separate lecture. In this lecture I will talk about the NRC. I will not also take the conditions from the 2019 aspect. Okay, I will just take a plain NRC view. So that state responsive with the massive security forces against them, against that demand, NRC demand. So similar report of the electoral practice was reported again in the 1983 state election, and protests turned into even more violent because this led to conflict between the government forces and the native students of Assam, and this push led the radical leaders of the students group to form the United Liberation Front of Assam, that is commonly called as ULFA. That is the first insurgent group to birth in the 1979. That is the United Liberation Front of Assam by the students against that malpractice in the election. So how will you justify this? This is given birth by whom? This is given birth by us only. This is given birth by the Indian government failure. And the main motive of the ULFA was to liberate the Assam from the Indian Union after this, and to fight against the problem of illegal migration. This was the main motive of the ULFA. And ultimately we are killing them because they have raised arms against us. In the democratic country, protest is allowed, but the violence is not allowed. Okay, so moving ahead, we will see Assam Accord. So in 1985, the Assam agitation was brought to an end by the signing the Assam Accord between the government of India and the students' protest and the government of Assam. These three were parties under the Assam Accord. When the Assam agitation took place, that started from the 1979 and continued till the 1985. That is something called as Assam agitation, and it was signed as Assam Accord as it came into the 1985. That is something called the Assam agitation, and it came into in through Assam Accord. And through this accord, it was promised to identify the Indian citizens and illegal migrants under the NRC, and the government even promised the special privileges to the natives of Assam. And after this, we will see that various government came and they forgot about this accord. They didn't take any action in the NRC, and finally this action is taken in 2019. And when the action is taken in the 2019, CA also came into play, where they give a color to CA as a religious color, where they will give citizenship to the people on the basis of religions. I will not name the religion. And in the 2019, NRC was saying that we are giving the citizenship to the people of India, and we will throw out the illegal migrants. And what will happen to the illegal migrants is a question of another session. Okay, that is the problem. On the one place, you are telling that we will not give citizenship to the country, and on the another case, you are telling that we will give citizenship to the people. Ultimately, what you are doing, you are making an equal situation, and in this situation, in the CAA, the color was added of religion, where one religion was said that they will not be given a citizenship. That is the one problem. That's why, because the huge protest happened in the year 2019. Okay, so this Assam Accord was signed between the students, government of India and the government of Assam. Okay, so but most of the provisions under the Assam Accord was not honored by the subsequent governments, as I've said, as ultimately it was signed in the 2019 by the BJP government and DLED. So the subsequent governments did not take up the NRC exercise, and this enabled the insurgent outfits such as ULFA to scale up into a violent activities, and it found a safe shelter in the Bangladesh and later in Bhutan as well. And later again we will see that our security forces entered and they removed from those places. Okay, so this ULFA, because of our ignorance only, we signed an accord and later again we ignored it, and because of that ignorance we have found that ULFA rose at a very high extent, and they get safe shelter in the Bangladesh, and later they found in the Bhutan as well. Okay, so through 1980s and the 90s, ULFA was responsible for lots of attack on the civilians and the security forces. During this time, most of the Bangladesh leaders were hostile towards India. Later we'll see the Sheikh Mujibur issues also. Okay, so at that time the Bangladesh leader was also hostile towards India, and due to this they are getting safe haven to the ULFA, and even we will see NSC and Isaac Muba factions too. They are getting that is place to hide in the Bangladesh. Now we will see, as I have just said, that they were getting support from the Bangladesh by the hostile leaders, but actually before it was not the hostile leaders, they were in the support of India, because India helped them, that is Awami League, to getting free from East Pakistan, that is we converted into that Bangladesh that is free from the Pakistan, as called as the Bangladesh. So Bangladesh, which became independent in the 1971, elected the Awami League into the power, and this government was friendly towards India because India helped them. It was headed by the founding father, that is the Mr. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Later we will see the Sheikh Hasina helped us when we get negotiations with the NSC and Isaac Muba faction in the 2015. Okay, so he was very thankful to the Indian government in helping the Bangladesh to become free from the West Pakistan, and India had provided lots of support to the government operations in Bangladesh. And in 1974, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was assassinated and the Bangladesh military took over the rule, and this rule lasted number of years before it was replaced by the Bangladesh National Party in the 1990s, which were also hostile towards India. Okay, and both these governments were extremely hostile towards India, and this hostility of Bangladesh would continue till 2009, except for a small patch of 5 years between 1996 and 2001, and I think in this period only Awami League came into the power. I'm not sure, but I think so. You can check it on Google. Okay, so because during this period Awami League was again back in power under the leadership of Sheikh Hasina, daughter of Mujibur Rahman, continued in good relations with India, and the government sheltered various insurgent groups in Bangladesh based on the direction of ISI, and during this period ULFA emerged as a major threat of India, as they were getting shelter in the Bangladesh by the hostile neighbors of hostile leaders of the Bangladesh, who were hostile towards against to the government of India. Okay, so the operations carried out by the India security forces. So in 1990s, India targeted ULFA by launching Operation Bajrang and Operation Rhino. These were the two operations you can remember, you can mention in the exams. Okay, so through these two operations they severely damaged presence in the state of Assam, but could not do so for the state of Bangladesh. In the state of Assam, Indian government successfully tackled and they affected at a large extent, but in the Bangladesh they failed because of the hostile neighbors, because of the hostile leadership. The leadership were helping those insurgent groups, that is ULFA. They were helping them, ULFA, in hiding in those places. Bangladesh was acting as a safe haven for them. Okay, so due to this, ULFA came under the tremendous pressure. By this they started finding new safe haven as Bhutan, because India attacked on this ULFA and even in the Bangladesh regions too, but they were not completely eliminated, and after that they started to finding for a new safe haven, that is none other than Bhutan, and they started setting up a new terror camps there by tie up with the other insurgent outfit, that is the NSCN that is for the Nagaland, their demand of the Nagalim, then NDFB, KLO, and all Tripura Tiger Force ATTF. This was emerging as a new security threat, as India generally has a very cordial relation with the Bhutan, because if these insurgent groups are getting shelter in Bhutan, what will happen? India have to interfere, and India has a very good relation with the Bhutan. Ultimately, Bhutan also helped India in tackling with those insurgent groups, because they don't want name to act Bhutan as a safe haven for them. So such insurgent groups going to the Bhutan can affect such relations too, because India had a very good relation with Bhutan, and if we attack on those regions, there may be a damage to the resources of the Bhutan area. So in 2003, both India launched a joint terror operation called Operation All Clear. Okay. Through this operation, they managed to move out of the insurgent groups from these regions, that is of Bhutan, and this again pushed the insurgent groups to Bangladesh and Myanmar regions. So these get pushed where NSC and Kaplang faction moved to the Myanmar and all, and this ULFA and all moved to the Bangladesh. So ULFA again went to the Bangladesh and other went to Myanmar. So some pattern continued till 2009 and 10, but a change in the government in the Bangladesh that came as a blessings to India. That is the Sheikh Hasina, who was the daughter of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, that was the founding father of Bangladesh, where he was very much favored in the India, because India helped in getting independence from the West Pakistan. So Sheikh Hasina was the daughter of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and Sheikh Hasina became the prime minister, and her party Awami League again came into the power and assisted the India. They destroyed the safe haven of ULFA present in the Bangladesh, and the top leaders of ULFA were arrested and handed to India. This almost brought ULFA activities to an end, and this shows India's victory to one of the major insurgent group of East India. And in 2011, India signed ceasefire agreement with ULFA, and immediately peace talk taken place with the government of India, government of Assam, and the top leaders of ULFA. See how this student union emerged into such a terrorist kind of organization, where all the security forces went against them to make them into their favor. And this all was because we ignored those regions, ignored their demands. Okay, so one of the most top leaders of ULFA was Arabind Rajkhowa, and he was arrested in Bangladesh and handed over to Indian authorities, as I've mentioned in this para. And once the peace accord was signed, the faction of ULFA led by Arabind Rajkhowa negotiated with India. The peace deal was signed. So the peace accord between government of India, Arabind, is ongoing process, and it has been till signed, I think so, because this is the news of the 2019. And so another faction of ULFA labeled as ULFA 1, ULFA I, or independent, led by Paresh Barua. So just like Arabind Rajkhowa, Paresh Barua was one of the founding figures of the ULFA in 1979, as the NSC and as a Kaplang, Isaac Muwa leaders were involved. So, but this faction broke away from the peace negotiation and continued to lead under the faction of ULFA, which still continues to under the state of war against the government of India. So in ULFA also we have another faction which till now against the government of India. One came under the Arabind Rajkhowa, that came into the favor of government of India. Similarly, like NSC and Isaac Muwa faction came into the negotiation with the India, and Isaac and Kaplang faction went against the peace accord deal. Similarly, here also Paresh Barua faction went against the government of India, went against the peace negotiation, and still they are active, and they are raising war against the government of India. So they had sought their shelter most probably around China-Myanmar border. Similarly, NSC and Kaplang faction are also getting support, getting shelter in the Myanmar, and it has been said they are getting support from the China too. So India believes Chinese intelligence agencies are actively backing them with the assistance of Myanmar. Okay, so moving ahead, NRC. This NRC is before the 2019, where we have introduced NRC and CAA. there is nothing wrong in the NRC and there is nothing wrong in the CAA, but when we mixed them together, it is not acceptable by the majority of the people, because the color of religion is thrown in the CAA. So just take, we are taking NRC as a before the 2019 one. We will have a separate lecture where we will take NRC and CA together, don't worry. So this is the basic of the NRC. So the NRC is a register containing the names of all genuine Indian citizens residing in Assam, and this register was prepared after the 1951 census. And after the register was prepared, after the register was prepared, the state of Assam witnessed huge influx of refugees and illegal migrants, and hence these has been a long-standing demand update the NRC list. And because of this only we have seen that ULFA was emerged, because the Assam Accord was signed and the consequent governments forget it. Okay, so the protesters are demanding the government to update the NRC again, so that it was updated from the 1951, so they want to update it again, so that through the updating process the illegal migrants could be filtered out and only genuine Indian citizens would be recognized. So the government of India agreed to the demand of the protester to update the NRC list, and this was included as a part of Assam Accord, as I have said, in the 1985, where the Assam aggregate came into an end, that is Assam agitation came into an end in the 1985, and after that they agreed for the NRC again. So but the subsequent government has ignored it, and in the 2009 a petition was filed against this matter. In 2013 Supreme Court ordered Government of India and the Assam to take up the NRC exercise again, and it will be carried out by the Registrar General of India, which is also responsible for conducting the census of India. And Registrar General of India is making use of the state administrative machinery in order to execute the exercise at the ground level at direct supervision of the Supreme Court. It was in the vision of Supreme Court. The Supreme Court had taken personal interest to enjoy the rights only by the citizens of the country, and as per the draft created in the 2019, nearly 4 million people had been rejected because they were unable to clear for the eligibility criteria under the NIC, and those people were given one chance to prove their documents. The issue is that in India we are very poor in the document. And because of this only, even the genuine people were unable to submit the document as their proof to the Government of India as a citizen of the country. And as per this, 4 million people had been rejected. So now it has been given another chance to them, that is around 40 lakh people. In that is 2000, it is the data of the 2018, and ultimately we'll see that 2019 it will come into the play, but still the updation of the NRC is pending. And person listed under the NRC of 1951, that this is something that the criteria to whom it has to prove the document. So the person who came under the NRC of 1951, name under the electoral rolls up to the midnight of 24 March 1971 should be there. Before 1971, if the name is in there, you will be treated as a citizen of India, and all after that you will be treated as an illegal migrant. And in any of the other admissible documents, if you have give it, you will get the name in the NRC. So anyone who prove their presence as per the any above criteria, the descendant or the person will come under the NRC list. And the reason why 24th March is 1971 selected as a deadline, you understand, because of that formation of the Bangladesh, as it was after the midnight 24 March that the Pakistani army initiated Operation Searchlight in order to target Bengali minorities. In this operation triggered and the huge influx of refugees across the border of the Indian state took place, and the border that were near to the state was the Assam. The state of Assam received heavy refugees population even when the Bangladesh was liberated in the 1971 state, and continued to state a huge number of illegal migrants even today. Okay. So what will happen with those 4 million people who failed in proving their rights within that area by the failed to give the documents as a citizenship of India? Yes, it is true there may be illegal migrant in those 4 million people, and there may be chances of legal people of those area too. So how will they prove if they don't have a document? Let us move ahead in this slide. So they are given another chance to submit the required documents, and whatever be the case, they would not deport immediately. They would not be deported immediately, like you don't have a document, go away. No, it won't be like that. Those who will be left out will be declared as illegal migrants, and they will not be deported immediately by the foreign tribunal set up in Assam. Further, they can even approach High Court, Supreme Court. But once the foreign tribunals declare someone illegal migrant, then definitely they will face the possibility of deporting them. It won't be immediately, but they will be deported, and they had a chance of approaching High Court and the Supreme Court. Okay, so this would trigger massive humanitarian crisis, and these Bengali people are most of the time targeted by the local tribes such as Bodos, even the Bihari peoples in the state of Assam. A number of communal riots take place in the state, and they might be targeted by the local tribes if declared as illegal migrants and not deported. That is the major issue. Like, even if you are declaring people under these 4 million people who should be under the NRC, and if these Bodos tribe or these insurgent people came to know that even after the declaration they are not being deported, if their name came, then ultimately they may attack on those people. So the security of those people will also be an issue for the government if they are not being deported. How they will fight the cases under the High Court and Supreme Court if they are not getting security? They may be killed by those insurgent groups. Okay, so the most important issues under the NRC is that proof of Indian citizen is only done by the submitting the few documents. Such an exercise is bound to have a number of loopholes. Even today we know how much loophole is present in presentation of any documents. Now we are moving towards the digital India in this 2020. So as a result, they will be declared as illegal migrants, and there are number of cases where people were declared as illegal migrants, and after some time they were declared as Indian citizens. See, this is the issue. The critics of NRC labeled it as a faulty exercise which could result in unfair exclusion, unjustified exclusion, which can trigger massive humanitarian crisis. That is the issue. And when we combine NRC with the CA of the 2019, that is a huge problem for any citizens, and because of this we have seen lots of death in Delhi, lots of protest in Delhi, and in the Assam too, where too much protest happened. So moving ahead, the Bodo Insurgency in the state of Assam, part 1. Yes, it is a big lecture. You have to stick to it. If you are feeling bored, pause the video, come back after some time. Okay, so Bodos are the tribal people of the one of the tribal people of the Assam. They are ethnic linguistic tribal people in the northwest of Assam, and they reside in a Brahmaputra valley, and they speak the Bodo language, and they want a separate district within the state. And as they practice a very unique culture which is very rich in tradition. So the Bodos always felt a cultural disconnect with the rest of India because of the migrants or because of the outsider in those regions. So they are further seeking to protect their unique identity and culture. So this struggle for identity turned into a political rebellion against the government of India, and in 1980s few Bodos political organization was set up to lead Bodos in order to protect their cultural rights. And later a few Bodo insurgent groups were also set up with the objective of the liberating their regions, that is Bodo insurgent areas in the north, that is present in the northwestern part of the Assam. And it was seeking to set up an independent sovereign state called Bodoland, which won't be given as an independent if you want from the India. Within the Assam it may be given. So the first Bodo insurgent outfits to be set up was the Bodo Security Forces, BSF, not Border Security Forces, so which was established in the 1986 by the Ranjan Damiri. It is the same organization which was renamed as the National Democratic Fund of Bodoland, NDFB. The second group, ULFA, we have talked about. NDFB is left. It is the same group, that is the, if you want to remember from where it has been emerged, BSF. Remember the BSF, that Border Security Force. Here the Bodo Security Forces. They formed the Bodo Security Force, which was established in 1986 by Ranjan Damri, and it is the same organization which later that get renamed as a National Democratic Fund of Bodoland, NDFB. So NDFB is one of the most notorious insurgent group in this region, and it has frequently targeted the government forces, infrastructures like the schools, hospitals, education centers and all. Even further, they target the local peoples who are helping the governments. So like they frequently target the government force infrastructure outside it too, as a considering them as a threat. And this is the reason NDFB has carried out attacks on the Santals and the Mundas who worked as a laborer in the tea plantation of the Assam. And these Santals and the Mundas are normally Central Indian tribes. They were brought by the British. In the starting of the lecture I have said this, that they were brought by the British colonial government to the work under the tea plantation of Assam, and since then Santals and the Mundas settled in the Assam, and they took them as a threat of Assam. They are considering them as outsiders. That's why Biharis are also targeted in the region. Okay, so Bodo insurgency in the state of Assam, this is the part 2. So in order to counter the NDFB, that is your National Democratic Fund of Bodoland, B stands for Bodoland. So the Santals and the Mundas also set up a counter-insurgent force known as the Adivashis Commando Force. Now the Bodos form their groups, and again that the Santals and the Munda found their counter groups, that is known as the Adivashis Commando Force. And because of these two rival forces, the scale of violence increased in the state of Assam in the 1990s, and further the that is the ULFA was also at the peak, because they were getting support in the Bangladesh, as the Bangladesh leaders were also in the support, also were not in the support of India. So India was attacked from various sides in this Assam region. So recently the NDFB has been attacked Bangladeshis illegal migrants, and these clashes has acquired a communal migrants, as most of the Bangladeshis outfits were Muslims. Now the color of religion is coming. I was trying to escape this term. So in the mid 1990s, the NDFB witnessed the birth of the rival outfit. The group is known as the Bodo Liberation Tiger Force. So in the 1980s, the NDFB witnessed the birth of the rival outfits, the other groups, that is known as the Bodo Liberation Tiger Force, that is BLTF. Okay. So one thing I am missing? No. So NDFB is one of the most notorious insurgent groups in the region, and it has frequently, I've already said, sorry. So BLTF then focused on the establishment of an autonomous Bodoland territory of the India, territory within the India. Like earlier it was demand of NDFB, sovereign state. It should not be came in the decisions of outside, that the main law of India should not influence the NDFB. Their demand for the independence from the India. Now they are getting the birth of another tiger forces, that the BLTF, that is the Bodo Liberation Tiger Force, where they want autonomous territory within the India. They want separate administrative. It should be run by them, but it should be within India. So this can be accepted. But if you want independence as a separate sovereign state, it is not possible from the India. Within India, it is okay. So this led to the clashes between the NDFB. Now the NDFB and BLTF are fighting within each other. And NDFB had established a safe base in the Bhutan by working with the ULFA, as I said, and the latter got they were when the India attacked with the help of Bhutan and all. So lots of clashes, and they were fled from the Bhutan, and they again joined the Bangladesh regions. Okay, so I have explained in the some lecture. Yeah, here I have explained it here. Okay, so you can go through things. So these bases were destroyed by the joint operation by India and Bhutan in 2019. So that is known as Operation All Clear. Yeah, same operation that was finding here, that was mentioned here. Operation All Clear. Okay, so moving ahead. So in 2003 the NDFB lost its support base, and it has been under considerable pressure by the Indian security forces, as by 2003 the Bodo insurgent outfit had been weakened by the Indian security forces at the Operation All Clear, where they get the safe haven in the Bhutan, and ultimately by the Operation All Clear with the help of Indian Bhutan they will tackle down. Okay, so by 2003 the Bodo insurgent outfits had been weakened by the Indian security forces. The Indian government had carried out the effective insurgency operations, and this had weakened both the NDFB and the BLTF. And so India immediately pushed as the peaceful negotiations and imposed Bodoland Territorial Council's BTC Accord. Okay, so BTC Accord, as per the 6th schedule, provided special provision to the tribal dominated areas of the state of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram, and as per the provisions autonomous districts were provided for these regions, and the councils can be set up, and this autonomous includes the devolution of the power, that is area of administration, legislation, judicial, as per their demand. Okay, so because in tribal society administration, lawmaking and justice are governed by their traditions and the culture, it will not be by the normal mainland India rules and all. Okay, so and the terms of this accord was accepted by the various politicians organizations representing in the state of Bodo, and as well as the BLTF, because the BLTF was from the starting they were demanding as autonomous within the territory of India. Okay, so it was not a major issue for us. The major issue was the NDFB, because they were demanding for the sovereign state from the India, independent of India. That was not accepted. So the provisions of the BTC, that is Bodoland Territorial Council Accord, met the objective of BLTF, and hence the insurgent outfits agreed to surrender to the Indian government and laid down their arms and weapons, but the NDFB refused to participate in the negotiations, and even today they are active, because from starting they are demanding for the sovereign and independent state. So the 4 districts under the Bodoland Territorial Councils, that BTC Accord, are the Kokranjhar, Baksa, Udalguri and Chirang. Please remember this may come in the prelims. Okay, Bodoland Territorial Councils are Kokranjhar, Baksa, Udalguri and Chirang. So today they take parts in the democratic process within the norm of Indian Constitution, and this flexibility is provided by the norms of 6th schedule, where they can implement the administration legislative as per their customs and the rituals. Okay, so the NDFB continued to the insurgent movement still today, active today against the Indian, until its leader Ranjan Daimeri was arrested. Still it has some factions, but they came down when the insurgent movement against until the Ranjan Daimeri was arrested, and they targeted Santals, Mullahs and Bangladesh migrants, and most of the top leaders of the NDFB are under Indian custody right now. There are small factions which are still active, but there is not too much worry about that. Okay, so this is the part 4. I hope this will be the end of this Bodo insurgency state of the Assam. So the communal hatred of the Bodos against the Bengali speaking Muslim led to the massive communal riots in the 2012, and these riots gave a rise to the threat of the India's internal security, because of the immediately after this riot of rumor of fake messages starting circulating, especially on the social media on the platform. Muslims in the South India would target the northeasterners who are residing in the South Indian cities, and this was the first fake news. This was the first fake news issue in the India that caused that type of terror within the country. Okay, so this was because of this issue only fake news was getting expression on social media that Muslims in the South India were targeted for the northeastern who residing in the South Indian cities, and ultimately they are attacking on those Bengali Muslims. So this was essentially a sinister campaign to promote rumor mongering and promote the circulation of fake news, and ultimately sometimes it has been seen that these were the fake news were spread by the NGOs who were getting fund from the outside, from the external countries, and because of this only we are stopping those funds. Recently in the current affair I will talk about all those issues. Okay, so this is almost the first incidents where the social media platform was misused deliberately in the order to create an internal security challenge of India. So this was not any single incident, there was not a single incident of violence in the southern India, but these measures created the mass fear who reside in the southern India, and they started fleeing South Indian cities overnight. See how much this fake news created problem, how much fear, how much threat they have created in the problem. Okay, now we will see the incident is not the exodus of northeast India. As per the intelligence report, this foreign this incident was carried by the ISI of Pakistan, and this incident further pushed the UPSC to introduce this subject as a part of GS paper 3. Like because of this issue only we have a GS paper 3 subject that in 2030 as a part of new syllabus a topic was introduced as a security challenges where right now we are dealing with the internal security of India, which is a subject of UPSC part 3 paper. And from this 2012 incident only UPSC made it as a part of India, that is part of exam syllabus, that is India's internal security. That's why we are reading this topic in detail. And as I said, they are getting fund because I was just forget before here that NGOs were getting helping them, and they were getting help from the ISI. This NGOs were getting fund from the ISI, and all these are the issues that came in the news too. So how this NGO is getting fund, that what is the required that under FCRA Act, that is Foreign Currency Regulation Act, I will talk about in the separate lecture as a current affair topic. Don't worry. Moving ahead, now the third insurgent group that is left. First we have talked about ULFA, then NDFB. Now we will take Kamptapur Liberation Organization. I explained in the BDF. One was ULFA, another was NDFB. As in NDFB they get a birth of another group that was your BLTF, Bodo that Bodoland Tiger Force, Bodo Liberation Tiger Force. Okay, so now we have a Kamptapur Liberation Organization. So this military group was set up in 1995 with the objective of creation of separate independent state called Kamptapur, where some parts of district of Assam will be taken and other districts. So Indian Union, so KLO was formed to represent the grievances and interest of Koch Rajbonshi's people, because they feel their culture and traditions has not been adequately protected by the government of India and Assam, and they further believe other tribal as a threat to them. Even within the regions also, it is not the illegal migrants, even the other tribal peoples are also, they are believes that they are threat to them, and they believe that they were not adequately represented in India with the view of employment and other benefits. So thus they planned to set up an independent state called Kamptapur. So the proposed state is to comprise 6 districts of West Bengal, 4 this you have to remember, 6 districts of West Bengal, 4 of Assam, as well as few districts of Bihar and Nepal too. And when they combine together, they will called is at a Kamptapur state, a sovereign state. Okay, so in the past of Kamptapur Liberation Organization, that is KLO, had worked very closely with the NDFB, ULFA and the NSCN, also set up a base in Bhutan They were also tackled on with the India with the Operation All Clear in 2003. So this is but this group is still remain active in the few parts of Assam. KL is not as the same threat as before due to enhanced by the security forces of India, that is in the 2003. So it is not that much effective as a threat to India as compared with the NDFB and ULFA. So as the demand of separate statehood, so the state of Assam has also witnessed a long-standing demand of separate statehood, that special kind of things, a special priority. So there are a number of tribes demanding for the creation of a state within the Indian Union. So these includes Bodos, Karbis, Dimasas and Koch Rajbanshis. That this will include in the Kamptapur and all. Okay, so above all demanding for the creation of a separate state within the Indian Union. These are political movements but not insurgent movements. Okay, so but it has a potential to create the insurgent movements. So these demands come into force after the creation of Telangana, as the Andhra Pradesh got divided into Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, where they both have a capital at Hyderabad. Now they may divide it. Okay, so the 2009 violent protest in Andhra Pradesh. So in this case, the central protest was blackmailed with the violence and the force to agree for the creation of Telangana as a separate state. And as the Telangana was formed, then they also started to demanding such movement for demanding for a separate statehood. Okay, so if we create some development in a certain area, ultimately the demand from the certain area will erode. That's why government restrict from making such changes, because if they change in the particular area, ultimately the demand from other areas will emerge. As an example, we can see here. So the central government provided various provisions to these tribal groups through the 6th schedule, as explained in the previous slide also, in the last two slides too. So provide greater flexibility with the legislative, executive council, judicial and financial power. So Assam, Tripura, Meghalaya and Mizoram of the Indian constitution. So as per these provisions, these autonomous councils are created for the state of Assam only. The Bodoland Territorial Council set up in 2003 through BTC Accord. Karbi Anglong Autonomous Council, as these all are political, these are not insurgent movement issues. So Dima Hasa Autonomous District Council was also formed. So these autonomous units will provide decentralization of power, and it will enable the tribals to take ownership of the resources and will allow work under the norms of Indian Constitution. Now through this autonomous unit, they will have a greater control. They will not be completely dependent upon the mainland Indian government. They will be under the Constitution of India, but it will give a separate decentralization of power. It will give an ownership for the resources in their regions. Okay, and this they will come under the Indian territory only. Okay, so these kind of things are the solution for such issues. Not an independence or independent or sovereign state is a solution, and anyhow it will not be accepted if such outfits are getting emerged. Okay, so I hope you understand this lecture. It was a very big lecture. That's why I explained all the topics very slowly, very deeply. I tried to explain all the topics very briefly, and these I tried to emerge all those topics that were relevant for the government exams. Okay, so please subscribe this channel, because the subscription of you is a form of payment you are making. And if you have any suggestions, if you want any on-demand video lecture, please subscribe the channel, because this is a new channel. I want your support. Ping me for the PPT. All the the Twitter handle link are given in the descriptions. Feel free to ping me. I will be happy to help you. Thank you.